Broadcasting from my studio in Salt Lake City, Utah, for the Artist's Voice, this is Jerry Hardesty. I am the host and producer of the show and empower artists to tell their stories and talk about their art. In the past, you could only listen to the podcast, but now you can not only listen, you can watch us. We're live streaming through StreamYard.com. You can also comment and ask questions, not only in the comments section, but you can ask questions of the artist guest himself. The episode is being broadcast to Facebook, my Facebook business page for the Artist's Voice, as well as YouTube. And if you miss the show, you can listen almost automatically on my YouTube channel. All that being said, I want to bring on my guest for today's show. John Sproul is a professional artist with 25 years experience, not only as an artist, but also as an art activist and a gallery owner. John is from Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome, John, to the show.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for having me.
That's my pleasure. I don't know that we've ever met. I've seen you around, but I don't know that we've ever met. So anyway, glad
nice
to finally meet. Yeah, you too. Yeah, great. So, John, in the preliminary information that you provided, you state that talking about art is not an easy thing to do, and I have to agree with you. I believe it's not the norm for most artists because we kind of live in our own quiet little world, isolated unto ourselves. So, why do you suppose it's so difficult?
I think it's about interpreting what we do in our work in a different language. It just doesn't transfer or translate verbatim. So we're always stuck in that sort of gap between what we can speak and what we can paint or sculpt or whatever. So there's, frustration there, I suppose.
Oh, it's definitely frustrating. I've had experiences where I've been asked to talk about my art and I get tongue-tied, and it happens.
You may see that today. We'll see.
Well, I'll help you through it, my friend.
Oh, okay. It'll be all right. It'll be all right.
Good. Well, although there is a statement attached to your website, I believe that statement is not in your own words, but those of the art critic and curator, Darren Jones. Now, is that correct?
That is correct.
So and I'm sure over the years, you've got a very creative resume, or a very impressive resume, I should say, having exhibited in many group shows and many galleries, as well as solo shows throughout the U.S. and internationally as well. So based on your resume, you no doubt have had to provide artist statements to get into these shows or give these shows and so forth. So can you put into your own words what you would say in your present artist statement?
Yes. Darren said it very well. He's a master of words, but I'm interested in the body and what it manifests of the inner self, and in how that changes over the course of a life. I'm in my early 50s now, and I've had a number of experiences throughout my life that have molded and had a fairly large influence on the way I've had to live my life. And so I've come to an awareness that I really feel like the body has a lot to share with being able to understand who we are and how we go through things and why and what. And the results of that. I'm interested in this, what I call the otherness, this part of the body that we can't really define it, but we are aware of its presence. And I feel like a lot of our communication goes through the body, through body language and stance and other sorts of things, just in the body's presence. Speaking here, this is a good way to communicate, but in person, the communication tends to be more accurate, I think. So that's what I'm really interested in, so that leads into dealing with ideas of body image, of social constructs of what we should and shouldn't be, of ideas of beauty and other similar things like that.
So what you're saying in this communicating in person, you actually see the whole person because you see the gestures and the stance as you talk about, and that's part of the communication process. It's not just like a headshot where you share a little bit of information.
Yeah, obviously a video chat like we're doing is way better than a tweet or a text.
Or just a verbal podcast.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, they're all good in their own the way they function, but it's just not the same as in person.
Exactly. Well, I don't see anybody on here yet, and that's kind of the par for the course because it takes a while for people to gather, and then they're very reluctant to make comments or ask questions. Unfortunately, I think they're missing by not doing so. Well, creating an artist statement is probably one of the most grueling things that we have to do as artists. It's really a chore, and which goes back to your original quote about it's not easy to talk about your art or what you actually do. Could it also be part of that difficulty? Could it be part of the fact that our work is so personal?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I've written hundreds of artist statements probably, and I feel like they'll write one day and a week later they're just not right. And I've gone back and forth between being very academic and then trying to be sincere. And as I get older, I'm wanting to be more and more sincere and less academic, although you can do both. But
Sure.
But I just find that that it's ever changing, the perspective that I have. And so what I wrote last month, even if it was super accurate, which it usually isn't, it's not accurate today. So it's just this ongoing process. So yeah.
That was something that I had to learn, that you can't write an artist statement and just have it stand for your work forever. It doesn't work that way. Do you feel that you've been rejected from a show or an exhibition because of a poorly written artist statement?
Well, it's hard to say, but I would guess so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they don't tell you why you're rejected usually.
Exactly. Which is
you can only
frustrating in
guess,
itself.
But I'm sure that was a factor, at least at one time.
Yeah. But like I say, that in itself is frustrating because they don't give you any feedback.
Yeah.
And I've asked for feedback, but I don't get it.
Yeah, I understand they're so busy, whoever they are, doing whatever they're doing, that you can't respond to everyone. But being a gallery owner myself, I know how that is. I try to respond to people, but
now
it's hard.
That's one of the things I didn't mention in the introduction, I don't believe, is that you are a gallery owner, presently a gallery owner.
Yes.
Knox Contemporary Gallery. Now, do you issue calls for artists?
I don't. I mean, people are always welcome to submit a portfolio at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And depending how busy I am, it depends on how quickly I'll respond. But often I find artists through visiting exhibitions or studios or word of mouth. And that's how a lot of the shows that I put on, that's where they come from.
Mm-hmm.
I do get a few entries where I am impressed by the work and we move forward in a conversation for a year or two and then I show their work. So, but yeah, anybody's welcome to submit.
Now Knox Contemporary is not a for-profit gallery. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So go ahead, please.
I own an e-commerce company, and it inhabits a big portion of the building that the gallery's in. Mm-hmm. So I can afford to have this gallery without any need for income. And so I'm able to show work that perhaps does not fit into the art market or commerce of Salt Lake City. so I don't need to worry about it. So I often let artists just do what they want, and I've had some really good results out of that.
So you don't actually sell through the gallery itself. In other words, you may allow artists to put a price on their work, but they're responsible for collecting the money and that kind of thing as well, and taxes.
Well, we will facilitate the sale. We do take a small percentage, much less than a commercial gallery, because we don't need really need it.
Hmm.
So we'll handle the sale, but then most of the money goes to the artist.
I see.
And the sales aren't frequent. I mean, it's almost by accident.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
do sell occasionally. Yeah.
So back to you own an e-commerce business. Can you explain
Yes.
that? I assume
Uh,
that's how you make your living.
that is how I make my living these days. It's pretty simple. I buy stuff from usually at auction, and I sell it on uh, things like eBay, mostly eBay these days, and for profit. So mostly all over the board, but it's electronics and professional equipment and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. So now back to Knox Contemporary.
Yes.
I saw some images of, I assume it's the gallery itself, on your website. It was several different rooms that looked like you had just redone them. Is that
Yes.
is that the gallery itself?
Yeah, that's the gallery currently. I had the gallery open. I opened it in 2010,
Hmm.
10 years ago, actually this month, and it was a much larger space at the time. And so I had it open for a little over 3 years, and then I closed it for a couple of years so I could focus on some personal situations, and reopened it in 2015. And those photos are of the remodeled space, a much smaller space than I had before, more sustainable, so to speak. And so that's what that was.
So is there regular operating hours for the gallery itself, or is it just on special occasions, or for instance, like gallery stroll?
It's for gallery stroll and by appointment. I'm often there, um, but we do it by appointment. We've had some issues in the past. It's downtown, so there's some homeless people there, and there was
Hmm.
a time when there was a few years ago when there was a lot of homeless people there, and there was some violent things going on nearby. So we had to start locking our doors. So now we just do by appointment
I see.
because of that.
I see. And where, just for the information for anyone who may be listening, where's the gallery located?
So the actual address is 440 South, 400 West, Suite H. It's kitty corner to the Pioneer Park.
Oh,
It's
okay.
in the homeless healthcare clinic complex. So we rent from them.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Well, do you mind sharing about your personal life? I
Sure.
mean, for
Sure.
instance, what are you originally from Salt Lake?
I'm not. I was born in California.
I
So
see.
I've been here for quite a while.
Have you? Yeah. And so, how have you found acclimating to the culture of Salt Lake?
Um, well, I've been here recently for 16 years, so it was a little different. I moved here when I was 11 or 12. Lived
Ah.
in
Uh-huh.
Orem, Utah,
Mhm.
and then went to the U for undergrad, BYU for grad school, and then moved to LA for 7 years. And so I moved back 16 years ago from LA. And my experience in LA was different, and the people were different. So my initial adjustment was it was a little bit of a shock culturally, and people are a bit more guarded here when I came here. But since that time, I've met so many amazing people. That's my favorite part about Salt Lake, is just the wonderful people that I've been able to come to know. So, LA doesn't have much of a nature thing, and what it does have, there's probably more people out there in nature than there is in the city. So I love being here. I'm 5 minutes from several canyons,
Hmm.
and that's pretty amazing to me. That's been a nice adjustment. Also, being able to park and not take 2 hours to get to work. I kind of like that quite a
Yeah,
bit.
that's important.
Yeah, so it's been a good adjustment, but initially there was a little shock. Yeah.
I only ask that because I'm a transplant myself. I'm from Kansas, and I've only been here 25 years. 25 years is a long time, though. But yeah, it culturally it took a while to adjust. Um, so how has your past informed your work, your art?
Um, I think so. In the statement, it talks about my childhood being heavy, and
Which I can't imagine. You're a nice looking man. You're slender,
thank
and
you.
I can't imagine you being real heavy. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
But nevertheless, it was true, and and puberty helped that out a lot. Puberty's horrible, but
Oh
it
yeah, for
definitely.
anybody.
So, and kids were pretty mean about it, and that really damaged me as a person. Um, and I think that helps me to understand. Well, being an artist is, you're different than a lot of people. It just it helps me understand being different and how that's not a bad thing, even though a lot of people feel that it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's an aspect of my work. I'm dealing with different ideas of uh, what the body is, what different ideas of what beauty is. In our society, we tend to have this idea of what you should look like, or what you should do, and what you should not look like. And if you're overweight, you're unhealthy, and that's bad. But I'm trying to look at this as, no, it's not bad. It's just different. And a person's health is their own business. It's not my business. And all I have to deal with is the outside. And I'm trying to, in myself too, undo those social conditioning that makes us think that if someone is heavier, that they're bad.
Hmm.
Uh, to see that actually it's just a different kind of beauty. And so my youth and other things, hair loss and that sort of thing, has
Yeah.
helped me to be empathetic towards that more,
Uh-huh.
and hopefully understand it from a person who's had that experience, so that people can connect to it in a more sincere way.
So you kind of put yourself out there through your work. In other words, and I can't think of an artist to quote at this point, but many have said your art really isn't. You have to put your soul into your art, and I think that's what you're saying. You do is you put your soul into your art to deal with these issues you had as in your past.
Yes, and there's ongoing issues too. I mean, as we
Of
get
course.
older, we have to we have to deal with the ego of the body being. We have to deal with the ego and the fact that our body is becoming less of what it was, less powerful, less strong. And I've had to go through that in the last few years, just letting go of some things, just following, going with it rather than resisting it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that's a part of that whole conflict, that conflict of like what you think you are and what your body is becoming. And yeah, so it's not just about when I was a kid, but it's where I'm at now. It's having hypoglycemia, not having had to, in order to deal with that. I haven't had sugar in over 10 years,
Oh
you
my
know, and
God. Bless
yeah,
you. That's awesome. I'm very impressed.
well, it was a necessary thing. I don't think I would have done it otherwise,
Are you
a lot
diabetic?
sooner. No, but my mother is, so
I
I
see.
wanted to avoid that. And socially, that's a difficult thing. You go to someone's house, you got
Yeah.
to make sure, and then a year or two later, I started having problems with wheat. Uh, and now I have a carbohydrate intolerance. So I have to be very careful about what carbs I eat.
What the
So
devil do you eat?
yeah, that's a good question. One day I'll only be able to eat water, so we'll see. But so I have to keep a pretty tight regimen on it, or it affects my well-being and my ability to control myself. If I happen to take, eat some weed or whatever, it affects the way I'm able to think and become lethargic, and I prefer not to be like that. So that all this is part of the influence on the work.
But you're still physically active, are you not? I mean, you say
Yes.
because we have the canyons to hike in or ski in or whatever you do.
Yeah. So and part of that. So I've been weight training for my entire adult life, and part of that is not wanting to go back to the little kid, that was heavy. And I've moderated that. But as I get older, I realize in order to maintain a certain condition, I have to put more effort into my body. So I'm adjusting to a more holistic way of taking care of it as I get older. Whereas it was just weight training before and some cardio, because you have to do cardio, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm doing yoga and other specific programs to make it more balanced. Hiking is a big thing in my agenda, as long as it's warm enough. So yeah, I just have to put more into it.
Well, John, you're inspirational. You're very inspirational.
Well, that's kind, but it's really just out of necessity.
But nonetheless, it's still, I find it inspirational, and I say that because I was recently diagnosed pre-diabetic, and I have not made a lot of changes that I probably should. So eliminating sugar, I'm impressed with that. And how did you actually do it? Did you just quit cold turkey?
I tried limiting it to once a week
Mm-hmm.
or twice a week. I realized that just wasn't working for me. So I had to go cold turkey, but it took a while. It's it's an addictive substance, and so it took me a while to get to it. But some interesting things that have happened since then is that my sense of taste has become very heightened.
Really?
Yeah, for example, almond milk, unsweetened almond milk. And I know this is off subject, but
No, that's fine.
It's sweet to me because my taste has not been dulled by the sugar, and so I'm able to actually enjoy the flavors of food more than I was before.
Interesting. Can you handle fruit?
There's some incentive. What?
Can you handle fruit?
Yeah, I eat fruit, not juice, but fruit. But I also have to be careful. I have to do that moderately. But I do eat fruit and vegetables and that sort of things. But yeah, it's a constant, keeping in check. But there's some benefits out of it, So.
I told one of my doctors that my weakness is cookies and wine, and he said, "Well, eliminate the cookies and have 2 glasses of wine."
There you go.
Which surprised me because he's Mormon, and
Well, wine's, yeah, it has a lower glycemic index than
but it's good for the heart, and I have heart disease too, so there you go. Yeah, but I'm a lot older than you, man. So let's see. Well, what else can you tell us about your past? You have a family?
I have a family. I am in a kind of a merged family, a fused family. So I'm on my second marriage. I have 3 teenage boys of my own, and then my wife has 5 kids, and her youngest is almost 21. So we have kids between 13 and 33, which is weird.
Do you have any of them living with you?
My boys all live with us. My oldest is 19 and he's in college, but because of things as they are, he's with us right now.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Well, that can be a challenge in and of itself.
Yes, it's challenging for everybody right now.
So does that inform your art as well?
I think it does. It does because I have these 3 teenage boys who are in prime of their physical life. I have to tell them, I have to work out 4 times as much to do what you do just by sitting there. So it's kind of this going back and forth between seeing where they're at and where I'm at, and not wanting to be no competition, but just seeing that difference.
Sure.
And so it helps to define where I'm at a little more, rather than it was just me and my wife, who's almost my age, So
Yeah.
It does inform it, I think.
Well, have any of your sons inherited your genes for obesity?
Yeah, my oldest did, and he, like me, he grew out of it in puberty. My youngest is
Good.
starting to go through puberty. He's a little heavier, but not like I was.
Okay,
So
that's
we'll
good.
see.
That's good. All right. Well, what else inspires you? Or who is it? Chuck Close says, professionals, we don't wait for inspiration. We just get to work.
I am one of those people who believes that just working is leads you from one point to the next. I'm informed. Yeah, I'm informed by my readings. I enjoy philosophy and psychology and human behavior, and of course, lots of different varieties of fiction. And so they inform my work, but it's more indirectly. It's just doing the work that gets me from one point to the next, and putting part of the work is thinking a lot about it. So,
well, I find that if I'm not working, I'm thinking about it. So it's an ongoing process. Now, do you have a studio in your place of business or in your home, or?
Yes, in the place of business, everything's there. The business, the gallery, the studio.
Oh, that's awesome. So you can go to work and then you can take a break and go to the studio, or vice versa, or whatever.
Yep.
Whatever works for you. That's pretty awesome. I'm envious. I don't have studio space outside of my home. Would love to, but I just don't. So.
Well, I've done that before, and it has advantages for sure.
Sure. And it's expensive. That's my hang up.
It is. Yeah.
Certainly can be. Well, I see that you create a lot of charcoal drawings. You paint and you sculpt. Now, which is your favorite medium?
Interestingly enough, it's actually painting. Growing up, I just drew all the time. But painting is my go-to. I think it's important to be doing a number of different things and different medias, because they feed off each other. It makes you more creative. It opens your mind, gives you different perspectives. But painting's my focus, I think. And I think every medium has its aspect to draw on that can do something a little differently. And so they're really important to me. But painting is the thing.
Oil or acrylic?
Acrylic. I was trained in oil painting, but I found that it was limiting. Well, the health hazards of it were the first thing, but also the drying time and the toxicity. And I just found that acrylic is much more versatile, and I can do almost anything with it. I mean, it takes a long time to get to know that medium, but I'm happy with it.
I have found I recently switched back to oil. And I have found that there are products that will help that drying time, so they dry pretty fast rather than having to wait that traditional 6-month period before it's completely dry. So I'm really enjoying that, but yet I do the oil painting in my double garage. At least I have been. So, but with the cold weather coming, I'm probably gonna have to move it inside. So, well, tell us about your studio practice. In other words, what's your process look like?
Well, my process for each work begins in the computer. I draw from images, and so I do a lot of research on the internet, looking for images of figures that stand out to me, and also images of landscape or architecture or what have you. And then after I have accumulated a certain amount of images or whatever I'm looking for, I then start to work into a composition using Photoshop. trying to figure something else that works and that feels right. And then amidst all these processes, there's a lot of thinking in between. So I gather the figures and they sit for a while, and then I make the compositions and they sit for a while. And then I print out the compositions and I use them for the paintings and slowly build them. And at a certain point, once the basic structure of the painting is in, then I discard the composition I was using and go by what's on the canvas itself and work on it until it feels done.
So do you,
that takes.
Once you reach that point, do you paint intuitively?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you consider your work abstract or representational or a combination thereof, or what genre would you classify your work in?
Well, it's both. I mean, I love the figure and its structure and everything, but I also love paint. And so that's where the abstraction comes into it. The work has to not just work conceptually for me, but it has to work as far as the paint goes and the painterliness. So those and I've been both. I've been purely an abstract painter and purely figurative academically, and now they're together, and they may stay that way forever. We'll see. But yeah, the paint's as important as the figure to me.
So in other words, when you're painting intuitively, you're responding to the paint.
Yeah. And I'm responding to the problems I've created in the work that I have to resolve, which cause other problems. And when all the problems are gone, the work's done. Yeah. So.
And we're actually problem solvers, are we not?
Yes. Yes.
Here's a question that I often get, and I'm sure you've gotten it over your career. And that is, how do you know when something's finished?
Yeah, we do get that question, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And the simple answer is when it feels right.
Okay.
But what does that mean? I think it's just, as I've gotten older, I've learned to really, the most important part of being an artist is really trusting yourself and not second guessing and everything. And usually when I feel like a painting is done or near done, usually when it's near done, I let it sit for a while. And sometimes in that gestation period, it finishes itself. It's like, oh, that thing I had a problem with, it's not a problem anymore. It actually works pretty well.
Yeah.
And so it's really about trusting in all that experience you've had and knowing that it's right. So
after a time that painting is in that gestation period, do you ever go back and make a lot of changes?
Sometimes I've destroyed the painting and redid the whole thing because I realized that where it was not where I needed it to be. And I just had to start over. But that becomes less and less with more experience. But just two of the paintings in the show, I completely redid them, and they're 5 by 6 foot paintings. I mean, wow! You have to be willing to let go of it completely, all that work to do the right thing.
Yes.
So.
Well, I recently created a painting. I posted it on Facebook, and I think Facebook, or I can't remember where. But anyway, I had some critics say, "Well, I don't like those black marks." I had used oil stick to make some black marks on the painting. So I lived with it for a while, and then I decided, well, I don't like those black marks either. So I painted them out, totally painted them out. And that was after, 2 or 3 weeks of living with it. So I think we have, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think we have to be open to that happening. I took a painting off the wall in the show and did a little more work to it and put it back up. So it just wasn't quite right. It was eating at me,
Yeah. Well, did anybody notice?
No. It was only enough for, I just tweaked the color, like just a little bit, but it just wasn't right until that point. So.
Yeah. So. Was this recent?
Yes. This was the last month or so.
Now, do you have a show in Oxford at this point right now?
Yes, I have. I currently am showing at Knox. The title of the show is Serenity Now with the exclamation mark, and it's up through January 1st.
And you say the name of the show again.
Serenity Now. It's a reference to George Costanza's dad in Seinfeld. At
Uh-huh.
one point, I don't remember the story exactly, but he wanted to calm down. And so he came across this statement, serenity now, but he would like yell it. So like doing the opposite of what he wanted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it refers, forgive me for going on with this, but it
No, no,
refers to
please.
what after the pandemic happened, I was trying to do all these things to just calm down basically to relax, read, hiking, whatever. And so I had
Sure.
all these things going on. And that was okay because uh, my business everything was slower, everything was shut down.
Yeah.
But now that things are getting back up to normal as far as how busy I am, I'm still trying to maintain those things. But it's like they're causing more stress than they are relaxing because I'm trying to do all these different relaxing things at the same time. So it's kind of like serenity now, just anyway. It also refers to the tension, the conflict of being human, So
Uh-huh. So are
yeah.
these pieces in the show, are they representational?
Yes. Yeah, they're all well, the paintings are figurative. The sculptures are more about the presence, human
Mhm.
presence. But they begin at the reference of the figure, but they come out as completely abstract sculptures.
Well, I'd
So
like to see the show sometime. That's very interesting.
that would be great.
I've never been to Knox, and so I would love to come visit the gallery space and see that show.
I would
All
love to
right.
have you.
Well, thank you. Well, as an art advocate and activist, you've been a member of several organizations as well as founded an equal number. You founded the group that is current called Art Group. What's the
Yes.
mission? Yeah, what's the mission of this group?
Um, the group, it's been around. I can't remember what the beginning date is on there, but the idea is to bring people together just to talk about art or things related to art. Often, a lot of us live in worlds where we don't have that opportunity to talk about those things, and
Uh-huh.
so it was actually started by another artist, Nathan Florence, and I kind of continued it on and brought its structure and frequency in, and so it's just an opportunity for people to talk, which we all really need. Talk with people who understand what it is to be an artist. And it's not just artists. There's art patrons and art historians and critics that come also. But we all have a similar vested interest in the arts.
Now, does this meet on a regular basis?
It did.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Nothing's normal now.
Before the pandemic, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's been some gaps. Initially, for the first 5 or 7 years, it was every month.
Uh-huh.
But then things change, and it didn't happen for a while. And then I started having it periodically, and then we started getting it back to once a month again, and then the pandemic hit. So there you go. We've had it maybe twice since then over Zoom.
Yeah.
So
Oh, over Zoom. Well, hey, that's interesting.
yeah,
There's a lot of meetings that are happening over Zoom.
yeah.
In a physical location, do you use your gallery for the meeting?
We usually do it in my home.
I
We
see.
have done the
Oh,
gallery, and the last few times we've been doing it over dinner. Breaking bread is a great way to. It's a
certainly,
great ritual. Yeah.
certainly,
So
certainly.
and it
Well,
continues to evolve.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Is this by invitation?
Yeah, it's there's probably 30 people involved, and
Wow.
we get 10 to 15 on average. So it's just people I know who fit in the group, and some people will leave and some will come. It's evolving, but then there's your standard people have been there since it began. So
Well, maybe this is not the right question, but are there any art snobs in the group?
aren't we all art snobs?
No, I don't think so. I don't
um,
think you're not. I don't think I am. So
no, it's a very down to earth group of people, really good people. Not that art snobs aren't good people, but there's some barriers. There's barriers there that
yeah,
create
they
that
put up the
snobbery.
barriers.
Yeah, yeah. So these are very, earthy people, I like to say.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, you also founded the Foster Art Program and the Utah Contemporary Art Think Tank. So are those still active, or can you tell us about those?
No, the Foster Art Program came out of, I'd been here a couple of years in Salt Lake City, and I came to a conclusion that contemporary art is just very unfamiliar for people, and unfamiliarity often creates fear.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what if we just adapted the whole Foster Art Program or Foster Program and incorporated art, take contemporary art, which is very foreign and unfamiliar, and put it in your home, which is hopefully the most comfortable place for you, and so make it more easy to accessible. So I started that program, and what we do is we get a number of Foster Art patrons, and I would gather 10 to 15 artists, and they give a lecture. We'd have a lecture at the beginning of the process, and then the patrons would get to choose whose work they wanted to foster, and they'd like give me, choice 1 through 3, and then they would go to the artist's studio or home or wherever their work was and pick out a piece, talk to the artist, and they live with it for 3 months. And then what they had to do in return is send me feedback of their experience, and then bring someone else in. So that went on for a couple of years, and it was fun. It was really fun to do. But then I started the gallery, and it sort of faded away. So the think tank. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, the think tank came about because through the Foster Art Program, I got to know very quickly the people in the Salt Lake contemporary art community who were kind of the leaders. And there was a lot of, at the time, disjointedness. Like, everyone had their opening on the same night, the UMFA and the UMOCA or Salt Lake Art Center as it was. And so it was really hard for us, those who wanted to be at all these places, to be there at the same time. So the think tank was about bringing all those people together and just trying to coordinate and communicate, and also think about new projects to do. And it lasted for a while, but everybody's just so busy. It just ended up going away. So,
well, is there any thought of rebirthing, say, the Foster Art Program or the think tank?
The think tank, I don't know. At this point in my life, I'm about sustainability and not doing too much. I did too much back then.
Yeah. When you were younger.
Yes, when I was younger, I had more energy, and so yeah, there's ideas, and I've been talking with someone about the Foster Art Program and incorporating it in an already functioning institution, and we'll see. And we were talking about that right before the pandemic hit, so we'll see if that happens, where it would be not much input from me, and most of it would be handled by the institution itself. So it's a possibility.
Well, I think that sounds like a fascinating program. Now, tell me, is there anything in the Foster Art Program for the artists themselves other than having their art in someone's home?
Sometimes people would sell work, but it's also making connections and having those conversations. I mean, I can't speak for you, but for myself, having conversations with people through art or about art is just so rewarding in itself. It's nice to have money too, but and that could happen. And that wasn't the intent. The intent was to just educate people about contemporary art, and it did do that for those who are open-minded and willing to take that into their hearts.
Well, so, did any patrons develop from this program? I would assume they did.
Yes, and it's been 10 years since we've had, and I'm still friends with some of those people, and they still come to the gallery. And so, yeah, people sometimes it becomes an addiction, a healthy addiction, hopefully.
Yeah.
And people, I think when people recognize the value of the arts, whether it's contemporary or traditional, or whatever, they want more of it. So that did happen.
Well, with this podcast, I have interviewed people from all over the world, and I have not had that many people right here in Salt Lake City. So, I mean, I would like to have more on the
Mhm.
podcast from the Salt Lake City area. So if you have any recommendations, I would appreciate it.
Oh, I'll send you a few for sure.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah.
And of course, they can listen to the podcasts on most podcast platforms, but I also have a website for that as well.
Mhm.
Let me see. So what's your vision at this point for yourself as an artist, an art critic, or an activist?
Well, to continue forward with my work, personal work, to continue forward in what I'm dealing with and trying to get deeper into it. Just dealing with and trying to be just blatantly honest with myself and trying to just keep going deeper and deeper and expand my perspective more and more. Part of that's through my own thought processes and exposure for various different things. And part of it's also talking to a lot of different people about my work, which, so I have people come into this show that's up right now and share their perspective with me. And that's been really rewarding. The gallery, I just want to keep it going as it is, and sustainability, and continue to try to show quality work. And then as far as more activist things, I'm in the development of an idea about, last year, Amy Jorgensen, who teaches at Snow College and is an artist in her own right, also runs the art center down there. She started a program called Critical Ground, where she brought in the art critic Darren Jones, who wrote my essay, and she's going to be doing that every year or two, depending on resources and everything. And the idea of it is to bring the conversation that's going on outside of Utah into Utah, and to take Utah's conversation in the arts and take it out, which is a great idea. And I'm thinking of doing something on a much smaller level, where trying to bring different perspectives together in a conversation, much like what I'm talking about when I have people bring people into my studio to talk about what they see in the work. Do that in small groups and see where that goes. I mean, it's in the thought process right now, and hopefully get involved in institutions like UMOCA or whatever. So that's where I'm at.
Well, good luck with that project and moving forward with your art and all of the vision that you have for art in Salt Lake City, or in Utah, I should say. Do you have any advice for emerging artists?
I could be facetious and say, go do something else, but actually, but I don't want to say that, because I love being an artist. It's hard, but it's rewarding. I think there's a lot of possibility or temptation to get wrapped up in pretentious things, like how you look, doing clever ideas, things that are just sort of on the surface and easy to access. And so for young artists, I would say in your work, you've got to open your heart. You've got to be honest with yourself, get rid of the delusions, the diversions, and really figure out who you are and do work from that point of view, and work hard. Do a lot of work. Do not expect to walk into a gallery or my gallery and after doing a few pieces of work and have a show the next week or the next month or whatever. It takes time. It takes conversations. Don't give up. It's going to be hard. There are people who make a living at it, and it is possible. But even when you're making a living at it, and I was able to do that in LA for 3 years, 80% of your time is in business of selling the work. So you're always going to be doing something else besides studio work. And so just accept that, and then be generous, be kind to people. No one likes a jerk, no matter how good your work is. It's not worth it. Just be a decent human being.
All good
and
advice.
that'll get you far. I think.
That's all good advice. Well, you bring up the business aspect of making art, and I think that so many of us do not realize how much time you have to devote to business and marketing your work, merchandising your work, and that is very, very time consuming and takes away from that creative side of the work. So I think that in itself is a challenge.
It is.
And it's a challenge that is not taught in art school.
No, and I don't know if I've read all of those books, like How to Be an Artist.
Uh-huh.
Maybe most of them.
Yeah.
Even now, I still read them. Like maybe there's something new. I don't know.
Exactly.
But they really don't. They really don't teach you the exact things about being a business owner. And I think some schools are now having their artists take business classes, because it is, even if you don't plan on selling anything, it's a business in the regards of exhibiting your work or whatever you end up doing with it. It's a business, and we have the advantage because we are creative people, and we hopefully think in different ways, so we can do it in a very different way and do it in our own way and make it work. So yeah, it's unfortunate that it's not considered part of our education, but it really needs to be.
Well, the business approaches are in itself a creative. I mean, you have to be creative. You have to be creative. I recently, within the past year, joined artstorefronts.com. And the business resources that they put out are just endless. So it's really amazing. So they help develop artists. And
oh, great! I'll have to look at that.
Yeah, please do look at that. I'll take a look at my website for my art, and you get an idea of what it's all about. But it's fantastic. It's a little expensive to join, but I think it's well worth it because of all those business resources that they develop. They have a lot of playbooks.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Well, John, anything else? Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I think this is a great thing you're doing.
Thank you.
I don't know. I think one other thing I would add to the young artist or mid-career or wherever you're at is I realized I used to think that being in the studio, like I had to be in the studio every day, and if I wasn't, that was bad. But being older now, I realize that there's a time for everything. And sometimes you have to be away from the studio, whether you have kids or whatever it is. And that's okay. But when you're away from the studio, as we sort of hinted at before, your mind is still working. Yes. And so you continue to progress, not in the same way as if you're doing the work, but you continue to progress. And that's a good thing. And so if you have to work 2 jobs and not be in the studio for a year or 2 or whatever it is, that's okay. Just get back to it and keep doing it, and don't give up because of that vacation or whatever it was.
Exactly.
I think that's important.
Well, that's very good advice as well. Well, I want to thank you for being my guest. This has been great. It's been great getting to know you and know more about you and your work and Knox Contemporary. And I would really like to meet and see that show. And you do coffee?
No. I don't drink coffee, but well, we can do some. I can do some. I can do herbal tea. That's good for me. So we'll do something like that.
Well, let's get together and do that sometime. I would
sounds
like that.
Great, Jerry.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll talk to you later about getting together. So.
Okay, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure for me as well. So thank you. Well, again, thanks, John, for being my guest. Thanks for watching and listening to The Artist's Voice. You can find John on his website at www.johnsproul, that's SPROUL.com. And of course, you can contact John if you would like to visit Knox Contemporary. You can contact him and see that show of his. I think it'll be fascinating. Again, thanks for watching and listening. You can find the audio portion of the show on most Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as most podcast platforms. You may also listen on the show's website, which is www.theartistvoice.info. Look for an announcement on Facebook and Instagram for the date and time for the next show. I've tried to do one a week, but I don't always meet that goal. In the meantime, this is Jerry Hardesty reminding you to stay safe, wear a mask, and observe social distancing. Again, thanks for watching. Have a good day.